Morning, David.
Morning, Les. How are you doing this morning?
Good, good.
How was your day yesterday?
Yesterday was quite busy, lengthy. Managed to squeeze in a little workout in the evening. So all was good.
Good. Well, today I want to keep it really simple. Again, this is dynamic healing. And what we're trying to convey today is simply the complete mismatch between your unconscious brain and your conscious brain. And chronic pain is part of the unconscious survival response. It's automatic, it's powerful. And you look at every living creature, they have these ways that the nervous system coordinates their actions to solve the problem and survive. And animals don't have consciousness like we do. They don't have a neocortex, which is a very late evolutionary development. So the nervous system is this massive communication center. It's like a control tower. So it's taking all this information in, both mental and physical. You have all these receptors in every millimeter of your body. So your brain's coordinating all this every millisecond. And so it's taking all this data in and then allowing actions to take place, both physically and also neurochemically, to allow you to survive. It's an incredible balance. So just to give you a feel for it, the unconscious brain processes about 20 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes 40, 20 million versus 40. But think about it. My pupils constrict. I move in my chair automatically so my skin doesn't break down. My mouth moves automatically because I've learned to talk. But pain is part of this unconscious survival response. And to actually solve chronic pain, you have to access the unconscious brain, which takes a specific approach. What doesn't work is mind over matter. Again, it's 20 million versus 40. That's a disaster. You just wear yourself out. And so we'll talk about the solution a little bit, but once you understand this mismatch and understand that this is not going to go away, it's how we stay alive, it's a big difference. So we're just trying to emphasize one major point today is the power of the unconscious brain. It's an unconscious brain problem, and you have to access the unconscious brain to solve the problem.
Yep. I think as you were speaking, I was thinking of we need to give away bumper stickers. Remember those things back in the days?
Right.
The bumper sticker goes something like this: your brain's making decisions without you. Not
Right.
skills. So that's what it is. And I wanted to mention a study out of Harvard, and they wanted to know that, what happens, how often do we mind wander? Now, how often does your brain make decisions without you, or where are you? This is a study out of, done by Killingsworth, that's the author's name, a researcher at Harvard. And they found out that the person you're talking with and the car that you're driving next to, 47% of the time, people are not there.
I'm sorry, they're not watching the road specifically?
They're in the brain, they're in their head, and they're just mind wandering. So which means they're thinking about the past, they're thinking about the future, they're complaining about something. It's almost like the brain sends stories and images, and they're just kind of being entertained by it. And then all of a sudden they get scared when the car comes to stop. That's called mind wandering. And they've shown from a brain science perspective, the default mode network, the DMN, is activated. And when that's activated, it's sometimes you feel flooded. So those afflicted with chronic pain sometimes may not realize that when they move, the brain pulls up old injuries, memories, and so you get more flooded with things. Those who practice being in the present moment tend to engage the neocortex. So huge, huge difference. And I want to mention this one more time. Your brain is making decisions without your permission. Correct. And the goal that David and I are talking about, whether it's with life or chronic pain, you really got to pay attention to where you are and what's happening. Because the reason it makes decisions, as David said, is because there's too many sensory information coming in. It has to make quick decisions. And this part of the brain, the more primitive part of the brain, is where the unconscious response of the body is. So right. To be able to be in survival mode. So that's why it tends to make quick decisions. But we human beings need to know that it's doing that and get out of the automatic pilot response and what I call intentional response, which means from time to time, pay attention to what you're doing and where your brain is wandering.
Well, also remember that the brain is relatively late in evolutionary development. You have bacteria that don't have brains, and the brain is a very sophisticated communication system. And so the brain is just, the body is just a unit, which includes the nervous system. And we all know you cannot fly a Boeing jet without a computer. There's 2 million parts in a Boeing jet. I looked this up one day. There's 30 trillion cells in the human body, 30 trillion. There are 80 billion nerve cells in the brain. There are 10,000, each nerve connects to 10,000 other nerves in the brain. They estimate there's more connections in the brain than there are stars in the universe. So it's an incredibly complex organism. It's just a unit response. For those of you who have seen this movie, My Octopus Teacher, is fascinating because the octopus has 500 million brain cells. My cat has 250 million, but half of the nerve system is in the tentacles.
Yeah.
So remember, the nervous system is all over. It's just everywhere. It's part of who we are. So it's a unit. So it's unconscious, it's automatic. The neocortex is a relatively small part of it, or the thinking centers. And so mind over matter is not going to work. So what we're doing with healing pain is repetition, 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 so it becomes automatic. So two things. One thing, the first step is to understand this is not solvable, getting rid of anxiety, anger, and frustration. You can't get rid of the survival response. And by understanding that and letting go, all of a sudden you have a tremendous amount of energy now geared towards actually living the life that you want. So separating your identity from this reaction is very powerful. But we understand you can't make anxiety pleasant, you can't make anger pleasant, you can't make it go away. It makes a big difference. All of a sudden, this massive energy surge actually move the direction that you want. I call it solving the unsolvable.
Yeah.
The second thing is you just start moving to where you want your brain to go. So it's just really critical to understand what we're doing is recognizing the inevitable, you can't solve it. Recognizing you have to access the unconscious brain to actually change chronic pain. And a big part of this is mastering basic skills and just repetition, repetition, repetition. And so that's what we're doing here. It's not just reading a book and getting better or going to some guru like Dr. Arya, even though I couldn't resist. Sorry. So I'm waiting for a lessism to pop back at me. He always can get back at me with a lessism. So
No.
So the key issue is powerful. It's not solvable. You separate from it. You move forward. And it is just programming with repetition, repetition, repetition. So, Dr. Arya, I guess I'm asking you, what tool can I use today to repetitively reprogram my brain?
All right, sorry, David. It's happening. It's happening right now. Here comes the lessism. It's just there's a birthing.
All right,
here we go.
I'll write this down.
All right. Practice is the drive changer of the nervous system.
Okay.
Practice is the drive changer of the nervous system. Whether you practice something that's that again. So what David and I are trying to say to everyone here is this: is a lot of our pain and life and things that happen in the body and outside of us. The brain is constantly processing and making decisions on the fly, in service of your survival. What we're teaching you is this: is when you're struggling with chronic pain or stress or life problems, or all of the above, we want you to practice coming home to the body. And what that basically means is when you learn to sit with the pain, it's like dipping your toe in a cold pool water and then your leg and then your whole knee, what you're doing is you're gently moving towards desensitization. When you try to avoid stressors, when you notice something happening because your brain has made a decision to produce additional pain or tension or to increase your heart rate, you need to be able to be, aware of that's happening, because very often we're reacting more than being aware. And so the first step is, as David talks a lot about, is awareness. Awareness is a key to bring on the front part of the brain, let the lights go back on. And then when that goes on, the brain tends to listen to the front part of the brain, which tends to make a lot of decisions now. It has to take information from the past, your current situation, and it makes a decision and adds meaning and saliency. How important is it? So if the brain says, yeah, we've experienced this. Every time we move, it's bad. And then we start to go like, yeah, maybe it is bad. So let's increase that. So the front part of the brain does influence physical pain and emotional pain. So thinking about something that you don't want to deal with can magnify that. So what we do is we teach you to make sure you come back home to the body, and the breath is the simplest way to do this. And to be able just to feel what you feel, become aware of it, and feel what you need to feel just for a few seconds is a great way to dial the volume. It's a great way to, as if, get back into the front of the bus and drive this. Again, it's not about thinking. We're talking about somatic work or body work. David?
Right. So I'll finish off with the comment that, do I get the last word today?
I think you have for the past 3 days, but go on.
Oh, really? We're keeping score. Is that a new cortex or automatic?
That was just an
Oh,
automatic response. I'll monitor this. Sorry. Yeah.
no. So again, repetition, we become geniuses at surviving. Your body's incredible about surviving. We're geniuses, repetition, repetition, repetition. So we know how to do that. But we're not geniuses at knowing how to live the life that we want. So you don't solve chronic pain. That's why I don't pattern trace very much, which we can talk about later this week or next week, is that the time you spend pattern tracing doesn't matter. There's a trillion things that can set you off, but you're set off, it comes to a common denominator that you have this reaction, then you use the tools to deal with it. So you learn the tools to solve it. You don't go back and try to get rid of anxiety and anger. So once you understand it's not solvable, but you learn skills to process it and then move forward, that's the repetition. And your brain actually physically changes with these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why we want folks to practice some sort of breath work, and even yoga is a great thing to do. You don't have to do all those fancy poses, but it's about being in the body and learning to not disconnect. This is very important work, as science is showing us that the more we spend time learning to understand what's going on inside of us and just being gentle with it, leaning towards it, sitting with it, identifying it. So when you feel angry, you feel anxious, you feel sad, or you feel other physical sensations in your body, be aware of it and drop into your breath. That practice over and over again will help get the front part of the brain on to say, is this necessary? Remember, when the brain takes over, we still have the option to say, is this necessary? And with chronic pain, it doesn't take convincing. It takes sitting with that sensation to train the brain to be desensitized by it. So it takes time. This is for the majority of musculoskeletal pain I'm referring to. So please know that the work that David and I are doing is teaching you to retrain the brain. And so the body tends to respond. So practice is the drive changer.
You got the last word.
I did. I slipped it in.
Oh God, I give up. All right. So thank you everybody for listening. Again, I want to remind you, Les and I are doing a workshop on August 14th, and it's talking about, what's the name of it again, Les?
Befriending the inner critics.
So that's taking these tools, and we're going to give you some tools out of there to do the repetitions you need to actually change your brain. So we're excited about it. So check it out on my website, thedocjourney.com. Dr. Arya's website is remedypain.co. And you also can go to the Open Center in New York City where they have the course ready to go. So anyway, thank you, Les, and have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, David. Bye, everyone.